Hello and welcome to TCM Howzat, your one-stop shop to discuss all the week's cricketing news. And we are back in an Ashes week, and we're going to be discussing, obviously, the Ashes as well as the World Test Championship, which we saw last week. Joining me to do so is Alex Duffell, a man who's not been seen on this channel since March, I want to say. Rob Rush, journalist, commentator. Durham media man, if you didn't know, and Harrison Burridge, journalist student and photographer for the England over 60s.
You got the age group right this time, not the under 60s.
Not the under 60s. Anyway, here we go. So, first up today, we're going to talk about the World Test Championship because there was a lovely test match going on at the Oval in this great weather, and Australia unfortunately won it. Alex, I'll come to you first. Great to have you back. You went to one day. How did you find it? What did you think of it as a whole? Because obviously this is the second World Test Championship, a final we've had now. What did you make of it?
Yeah, it's a bit of an odd one. I loved the day. It was a great day out. I thought the Oval as a venue is a fantastic venue. You kind of went to it, and it was a bit like no test match I've ever been to, for multiple reasons. It was very weird going to a test match in England as a neutral. That was very strange. There were majority of fans there were either Indian or Australian fans. So that was a slight strange. It just felt very odd. It's the only way I can describe it. It's this kind of one-off event. I think there's something about the World Test Championship final that can work and could work in the future. I'd put it this way: I think it's not the worst idea in the world, but there's something still not quite right with it at the minute. Having a kind of one-off random game somewhere at some time, always in England, it seems to be, although there are logical reasons for that. It does just seem a little bit strange to me. Although it was a great game of cricket, which I think helped.
Definitely. And of course, Australia, as we mentioned, unfortunately won, and they're going straight into the Ashes after a win, which is not what we wanted. Harrison, what did you make of Australia's performance? Who impressed you? Who should we be looking out for come the end of this week?
Overall, it was a very impressive performance. I don't think you can take anything away from them, despite India's poor performance in areas and stuff like that. But Travis Head in particular, the way he batted on that first day and that's what won Australia the game there. He got them well ahead of the game when India's bowlers were a bit off the mark and a bit off the pace. He took them to town, scored a fantastic 100 and I believe he made it 150 the next day and just took it. That was the game there, and you look at it and that's near enough the final difference. But you also look at Australia's performance and you're like, there were times when they went off the boil. There was that morning where they dropped several catches during that Rahane and Thakur partnership, Pat Cummins no ball that got, I believe, Thakur RBW, but then obviously not out. Just little things like that. It wasn't a polished, perfect performance from Australia, and it definitely, if you're England watching that, you're like, okay, we're happy with that. We expected them to be this good and good in this areas, but then they also went off the boil at times, and that's where England will be looking to capitalise coming in these next 5 matches.
I like to say that they were rattled, even though they probably weren't. But it's Ashes season, so let's shit talk the Aussies. Rob, on the flip side of that, then India, for them, a very disappointing loss. I would have thought they would have wanted to have come out fighting and won that game.
Yeah, 100%. I think I saw a post that said they now haven't won an ICC trophy going back to 2012, I want to say, or sometime around that. They've always been quarterfinalists, semi-finalists, or finalists, and have come up short multiple occasions. So not the best for them, but as Harrison alluded to earlier, kind of when your bowlers don't hit the mark day one and allow Australia and Travis Head in particular to kind of hit you all over the place, and we've kind of seen it with how England have played with a very positive mentality, it can be very hard to come back from that. So yeah, I think there might be some questions over some places in the side. India's always going to have a great amount of talent coming through, and there is a great amount of talent coming through. So there'll always be questions about should we give the next few guys a chance? Just Rishabh Pant is still missing from this side, so he's obviously will be a big addition when he's back fit. But yeah, a very disappointing performance from India overall. There was a slight glimmer of hope, I think, end of day 4, because there was kind of, they've got enough wickets in the bag if they can put together partnerships. It reminded me of when they were last over here, I think around 2018, I want to say. We had a 5-test series against them, and Pant and Rahul almost took the Oval Test away from us with their fantastic batting. So there was maybe a little bit of hope there, but Australia showed their continued class and wrapped up pretty early.
And is that down to Australia's? I don't know. I didn't see much of the match, but Australia's bowling attack, it seems quite strong this summer. You've got the likes of Scotty Boland, Mitchell Starc, Pat Cummins. Alex, does that scare you, that bowling attack? Because I'm a little bit scared.
Scott Boland petrifies me. That man, England batters will be going to sleep. That man will be in their nightmares. If they do not play him first test, which I just think they would be mad not to. We're hearing that Hazelwood is fit, so it sounds like they're going to go into the first test with a fully fit bowling attack. I think that gives them a little bit of a conundrum, because historically Boland is the one who misses out. Boland is the new boy on the block as such in that attack. He's only been around 2-3 years. He hasn't really. They've only kind of played him when somebody else has been injured, but he's their answer to Ollie Robinson. He will not give you anything. He's the closest I've seen Australia have to somebody a bit like Glenn McGrath. He just makes us play every ball. He'll nip you off. He'll get you clean bowled when you leave. He is a dangerous, dangerous bowler. But it then gives them a big call to leave out either. Probably what it looks like could be one of Starc or Hazelwood is probably going to miss out.
And we're going to come back to the Ashes a little bit later on, but let's stick with the World Test Championship for now. And obviously, it will enter a new one coming up next. The third one, I believe, in this format. Harrison, it's a bit all over the place, really, isn't it? In terms of scoring, playing matches. Like, I remember I just glanced at the table before the final, and it was like, we'd played something like 27 tests, and then down at the bottom, the West Indies had played like 13. So it didn't really make sense. Looking into the next cycle, how can the ICC improve the World Test Championship in the context and the sense that it makes?
Well, it's too late to improve it for the next cycle. The fix is set in stone now. You've got these series decided. I think it's been all over Twitter today, the fixtures each team have got, but you kind of summed it up quite well there. I know it's a view Alex holds well. Not all the teams play each other. You've got some series that are in the World Test Championship, and then some are not. Like sometimes, like when England have been playing New Zealand, they've not been World Test Championship series. You've got then like series are just varying lengths. You've got when like England play India, Australia, and vice versa in that little group. It's all like 4 or 5 tests, but then a lot of teams are only just playing 2-test series, which then there's more weight on those points. I think it's 120 points split across the series in terms of wins. It's only then 60 points to win when in a 5-match it's just 24 points. So it's just little things like that. That's why they have to have then like the percentage points or whatever way they use it to decide teams. But it's a very good idea. It's helped make Test cricket in some ways have a bit of an edge to it. Making sure there's kind of a winner every couple of years is a nice little touch. And even though it is Australia this time, but seeing New Zealand win an ICC event couple of years ago was very nice, but it needs improving and make sure the context fit is actually relevant to everyone. And obviously that does come from the ICC, because these smaller nations can't play more tests or bigger series without the funding from the ICC, which like England, Australia, and India can generate themselves from all sorts of revenue streams they have.
And just finally on this for all of you, we've seen this as a one-off test match. Would you like to see it become a series in the end? What do you reckon, each of you? I'll come to you first, Rob.
I think it probably would work better in principle than a one-off test match, kind of as Alex alluded to, kind of a one-off test match in the middle of, especially when it's not England involved. If you're playing it in England every year, it's kind of... This is meant to be finding the best test team over like a 12-month period. And you could argue that maybe England is a really tough place to play if you're not used to it. But then you'd also argue India is really tough to play if you don't play spin. If you don't play spin regularly, then India is one of the toughest places to go as well. So, yeah, I think maybe a 3-test match series probably sounds about right. Maybe one in each of the participating countries' home. So take Australia, India, 1 test in Australia, 1 test in India, and then maybe you have an England test as the third like deciding test, as kind of like this is the test of all conditions kind of thing. But why can't we take this to New Zealand? Why can't it be in the West Indies? It shouldn't, especially with everything that's come out with the alleged ICC and the BCCI wanting to increase their share of the revenue that cricket makes. We have to. It's easy for us to say as we're all England fans and kind of England are part of that big 3, but we have to move away from it just being those big 3. We have to keep it. We have to keep it around every single test playing nation. Look at Ireland when we played them like 2 weeks ago. They don't have a test ground. They don't have an own county system set up. And players were forced to choose between a Red Bull contract with Ireland and not having one and playing, for counties and stuff. So, I think probably in theory, a 3-test series works better than just a one-off test match in the middle of nowhere. And I think the timing of it as well. England have had a bit, you could say they've had an advantage because they've now had a week off in between tests, whereas Australia, I know they've been in the beer garden celebrating this one, but if anyone's picked up like a little niggle, doesn't really give them a lot of time to get over it before that first test starts this Friday.
Definitely. Do you agree, Harrison and Alex, on that point on making it into a series? I don't know who can go. Alex.
Well, I've already tweeted about it. It was my tweet on the account, but I quite clearly have my views on that. It's I find it very odd that you have, when you imagine playing an ODI World Cup, right? You have the ODI World Cup, all the games are in one country. Oh, and yeah, we're going to have the final in a completely different country. That effectively is what the World Test Championship is. You have all the games all over the world, multiple conditions, multiple series, and yet it's decided by a one-off random game wherever they want to put it, which at the moment seems to be Southern England. They seem to have quite a liking for. So it does seem a little bit weird to me. There's been multiple issues and solutions banded around. The biggest issue is the schedule. There is no way of, in an ideal situation, everybody plays each other. You have it over a 3-4 year cycle, whatever you have. Everyone's played the same amount of tests. They're all 3-test series, whatever. And then the best of the 2 at the end of that go into a 3-test series played across a year in multiple conditions all over the place. That's the ideal scenario. That's never going to happen, unfortunately. So I think at the minute we've probably got to live with what we've got. And to Rob's point about taking it to other countries, I imagine they will do. I think the issue they face again with that is that if you take it to the West Indies, then it's Australia against South Africa in the final. Nobody is going to watch it. And they will want to avoid that. Likewise, they probably won't want to go to New Zealand because as much as I love watching cricket in New Zealand, again, the grounds are not that big. So all of a sudden then they're limiting themselves to, the big countries again. I wouldn't surprise me if the next one is in Australia. Really wouldn't.
So Harrison, then I think it's been unanimous so far that we want to see this as a series. Do you agree with that? And also just on, Alex's point of taking it around the world a bit and branching out of England. Do you not quite like having it in England? I know we're biased, but do you not quite like having it in Southern England?
It's very nice having it in England. It's on your own time zone. It's the same as any other test match, albeit half an hour early start this one. And it's just perfect to have in the summer away from, obviously when England aren't involved. A test in England doesn't involve England. It's kind of a rare thing and a nice sight. But I think, Alex, that point you made at the end there about fans and trying to make it filling stadiums around the world, that's kind of why the ICC love England. They know, kind of regardless of who it is, they're going to get a near full house, a lot of tickets sold, and especially when India are involved or other like in Australia as well, they're going to get big followings over this part of the world. You expect the same probably in Australia as well, but we've seen in India sometimes test matches, the attendances can be a bit low, and elsewhere it's kind of the barren landscape really. But in terms of the original point about making it a series, I mean, it'd be very nice to have a series, wouldn't it? 3 matches to decide the ultimate test team for that cycle would be perfect, but the schedule, I mean, we talk about this every episode we're on here, but there's just simply no room for 3 tests. However they want to do it, based in one country.
Sorry, go on. I was just going to make a terrible joke, so I just continue.
Yeah, I'll carry on then. Whether they want to have it 3 tests in one country, 1 test in each home nation and neutral, there's just no room. And I think obviously you got Pat Cummins came out and said it's maybe like an Olympic final or some other finals where it's just a one-off, and also you got Burridge, the losing captain, coming out and saying, "Oh, it'd be nice to have a 3-match series," which could be looked at as convenient as the losing side. But I mean, I don't mind a one-off. I quite like one-off matches. It kind of does prove to some sides who are the best if they can turn up for that one-off occasion, where series can maybe get away with a bad performance going there. But I will side with Rob and Alex here on a series for the World Test Championship final.
Well, it's a unanimous thing, and just for the record, I also think it should be a series. Anyway, let's move on from the World Test Championship then to the Ashes, because the weather in England is glorious. And it feels like the Test summer is here. England, Australia, Ashes summer. It doesn't get much better than this, does it, Rob?
Nah, it really doesn't. It's very. This is the first time I think. Well, maybe last summer there was a little bit of it. There's the intrigue about Stokes and McCullum. How are we going to play? I feel like this is the first summer in maybe 3 or 4 that we've actually gone into it looking forward to England playing Test matches. Because as good as Trevor Bayliss had been, that I remember I was rewatching the India Test series, just because I've got nothing to do now while I finish uni, I'm not working. Just sat there on YouTube, be watching, kind of like, Jesus Christ, we batted ridiculously slow. 200 on in a day was considered fast for us batting, and Mo and Ali was batting 3, and we had Adil Rashid on the side, and, Toby Ronan Jones was still hanging around, and Josh Buttler was at 7, and there was a lot of different things that are going on around that Test team in a minute, and around that Test team at the time, and you didn't know which England was going to turn up, in a sense. You didn't know if it was going to be the one that would bowl the opposition out for 170 and then be 50 for none at close and be in a really strong position, or you didn't know if England were going to be skittled for 130 and the opposition would be 120 for 2. It's kind of well, we know where this Test match is heading. I think this is the first time that us as fans can go, look, no matter how England go, we're going to be entertained here. Whether it's, if we're going to be bowled out for 140, it's going to be on our terms. We're not going to be playing outside off. It's going to be someone attempted a slog sweep for 6 and got caught on a boundary or something like that. For me, this is the first time in a while that I can be actually excited to sit down and watch Test cricket. Unfortunately, got a couple of tickets to go live. So, yeah, looking forward to that one because I haven't been to an Ashes Test match yet.
You haven't been to an Ashes Test match, and
I have not.
England fan, honestly. Alex, England, the big news since we last spoke on this podcast, which annoyingly the news broke just after we'd recorded the day after, and I'm terrible at editing, is that your beloved Jack Leach is out for this summer, and his replacement is none other than Moeen Ali, which is, I think if anyone had said that, it would be, I would have looked at you and gone, what the hell are you on about, if you'd have said that to me about 5 months ago when he announced his retirement. What do you make of Moeen Ali as a replacement, and also how gutted are you for Jack Leach this summer?
I'll go with the second one first because that's easy to answer, and the answer is very. The news broke during the Somerset game. I was down at Taunton at the time, and there was just a kind of collective groan from all of us as it kind of went throughout the entire media box. It was, look, Jack's been brilliant. I think the confidence Stokes has put in him, he's never going to be world class. People have got in their heads about averages and numbers and whatever. The job he does for this England team is brilliant, and I think he's an integral part to this team, and I think he'll be a big miss. So I'm very gutted for him. Moeen as a replacement, the honest answer is I tweeted at the time, I had no idea who they were going to pick as a replacement. The honest answer is that, there isn't anybody out there that you go to. Part of the problem with the way and what we've done to the championship, we've stopped really producing spinners. There is no successor. The only quality spinner on the championship is Simon
Is that
Harmer,
Parkinson?
who we've gone
No.
and no, is not Matt Parkinson, is Simon
It's now
Harmer, who
Felix
we've gone
Organ,
and let
actually, but-
qualify for South Africa.
Simon,
You
I
know,
watched Matt Parkinson in his one game for Durham bowl wides and no balls in a Div 2 game. There was no way he is stepping foot in an England Test jersey ever again.
Just not true though, is it?
yeah,
Come
your
on.
options are Parkinson, who has been loaned out, basically can't get in like second.
He's been playing second.
You've got-
He's been playing second cricket.
I'm not
Yeah,
putting up
you've
with
got-
this slander on all this podcast.
You've got Dom Bess, who is actually doing okay at Yorkshire, but we've seen him at international level. He probably doesn't have the consistency for it. And then other than that, what else are
Rahan
you looking
Ahmed,
at?
but he's probably
No,
too,
Rehan Ahmed. Yeah, Rehan Ahmed
he's
is
too
18.
young.
There is
got-
no chance you chuck a teenager in the Ashes. He was brilliant in Pakistan.
Exactly.
I love they gave him the confidence. But this is spinner in England is a totally different role. Totally different
The
role.
only other two that came to mind for me were Will Jacks. Obviously, he debuted in Pakistan and picked up a fifer, and you'd probably argue he'd strengthen the batting lineup. But as a bowler, you'd think probably something to be desired in English conditions. And the only other one kind of was Liam Livingstone, which again, his bowling is he only bowls in white ball and it's atrocious. You know, I don't understand why he bowls himself half the time. The guy goes at 12s, like most games that I watch. So there was no real kind of natural one. And to be honest, like on the Mo thing, when you actually went down the list, we were doing a T20 game at Durham, and when the news broke, and we all kind of sat around waiting to grab an interview after the game with one of the players. And we all just kind of stood around to ourselves and went, this does scream of Mo and Ali being asked to come out of Test retirement again for this series, because there was no one else, as Alex has said there was no one else that is immediately going, yes, I'll be the replacement. You know, as you joked about Matt Parkinson. If he'd been playing for Lancashire and actually been going all right, then fine. But since his replacement for Jack Leach as a concussion sub, has he done anything in Red Bull? Has he done absolutely anything? No.
All I will say on this is that I think England have a lot to answer for shaking his confidence. I think they took him on tours, they dragged him round as a reserve, and then, you know, gave him the impression he was doing well. And then basically Bazball came in and they went, yeah, we don't want you anymore, and just like shoved him to the roadside. And I think for a player that can shake your confidence, so I'd say England have to take responsibility for that. But that's a debate for another day. Harrison, you're a massive Moeen Ali fan, if I remember correctly. So I'm imagining that you are frothing at the mouth at this prospect. How happy are you?
I'll just start by saying Rob completely forgot about Liam Dawson, which is a Hampshire fan. That's a criminal act.
He's a Durham fan now.
Dawson was never going to get picked. Let's be real here.
No,
It's like asking for Mason Crane to be picked again. It's not happening.
Well, I'll start the Felix Organ campaign tomorrow. Anyways, in terms of Moeen, it was kind of at first. He never crossed my mind when I first saw that Leach, like the news come out. You're working on like who's been involved in the setup, and then you see that first article drop from one of the Telegraph journalists the same night, and you suddenly realize this is actually a possibility. But in terms of like actual thoughts on it, I mean, if there's any style of England testing that he's going to fit, it's this one. I mean, if he does, albeit yes, he's at the end of his career and kind of on the downturn, particularly in Test cricket over the recent years, you'd expect him to have some success. He's going to be given, same with Jack Leach, he'd be given attacking field with the ball, he'd be allowed to bowl in attacking nature. Stokes will back him to the hilt on that front. And then with the bat, he's going to be at 8. He's going to near enough have freedom, you'd imagine, most of him to do what he wants. And I mean, that's a scary prospect for anyone, especially if he's coming in with 300, 350 already on the ball in England in a dominant position. But I think the others have summed up well. There was no kind of standout option really crying out to fill that spot from the ones England have used, or just from county cricket in general. So, I mean, I can't blame them for going back for Moeen. And I mean, I'm going to enjoy it.
The thing for me is the fact he hasn't played red ball cricket in 3 years, something like that. 3-4 years. It's a lot to ask someone who, I mean, yes, he said he's flirted with the idea of being open to it under McCullum and Stokes, but a guy who's not actively looked to play red ball cricket. You know, I'm a huge Josh Buttler fan. I'd be saying the same if Folkes and Bairstow had gone down and we're asking Josh to come back for a series. Kind of like,
I would not.
Just shock horror, you wouldn't. But that red ball practice has to count for something. As good as these players are, it counts for something. And Moeen not having played for 4 years, it's a huge risk. But as we've already, as everyone's kind of pointed out, no matter which side of the fence you are on this argument, England, we didn't have anyone else to go to. You're looking at, as we kind of allude, those names that are either not good enough, haven't played red ball cricket, or are way too young to throw into the fire of an Ashes Test series. So I feel like this is the one. It's the one with the least damage, I think, to come out of it. Because if Moeen doesn't perform well, what's the fallback? Jack Leach injured on the eve of the series. They didn't have anyone else. Moeen's the most experienced campaigner there. I would like to point out that people saying if you're getting Moeen at his best, he offers everything that England need. I don't understand how you can make that prejudgment, because Moeen has not played Test cricket and red ball cricket in 4 years. So you can't assume you're going to get Moeen Ali at his best. It might well be that he turns out to be. We don't know. But on the face of it, you have to take it. This is a guy who's coming into the Test arena, not played in 4 years, wasn't also that good when he was on his way out of the Test team. This was a guy that was averaging, I think, around 15 with the bat and averaging high 30s, maybe low 40s with the ball. So it's not exactly the most awe-inspiring appointment, but you never know. He could be the right person to thrive under Stokes and McCullum. We'll have to see. But yeah, it as Alex said, it says a lot about how the championship's been treated, that there's not another spinner that we can immediately turn to and go, yes, that's the Leach replacement.
Well, we will wait and see how Moeen Ali goes. Let's talk more about the England squad as a whole then, because we talked about this in our last podcast. Alex wasn't with us for that, but I wonder, who is your ones to watch? Who's the ones who you want to put a curse on to do terribly for the entire tournament? Alex, let me come to you first. Which England player do you reckon is going to have a stellar Ashes?
Can say this now, and I can confidently say that I'll probably get injured in the one for the first test. But I am going Ollie Robinson for leading wicket taker in the series. I think he is going to tear the Aussies absolutely to pieces. And I think this series will be the passing of the baton officially as such from the Broad Anderson era into the Robinson era.
Fighting talk. Harrison, who would you choose as your one to watch? Would you go Ollie Robinson, or where else would you go?
See, I was going to go Ollie Robinson, but for the sake of just having a different option, let's go Johnny Bairstow, purely for the redemption story from coming back from his injury, and all the talk that surrounded him coming back in, kind of taking back the role per se of what Folks has done. For him to have a fantastic series and emulate what he did last summer would be fantastic. And I think it's fair to say you certainly couldn't put it past him doing that, because he is that type of character who's back up against the wall. We've all seen it. He delivers.
And Rob, I think
I was going to go Johnny Bairstow, so thanks, Harrison.
Happy to help.
I'm going to go Mark Wood as a kind of a left field choice, because everyone was really excited. Everyone was excited about Jofra Archer being back and us having an actual pace bowler, like a really quick bowler in the attack. And he's not. Unfortunately, he's done his elbow again. It doesn't look like we might see him in Test cricket again. And Mark Wood is a little bit the same. He's also dealt with some injuries. He hasn't played Test cricket in England in a while. So it'll be interesting to see, first of all, how many tests he gets, because I think there was a lot of talk when Leach went down that maybe, Sky was talking about it a lot. Nasser was kind of ducking the question, and Atherton was really, he'd go Anderson, Wood and Robinson to have a change of attack. And then there was a lot of talk when Leach went down, you just play all four then, and you don't have to make that call. So first of all, it'd be interesting how many tests Mark Wood gets. I think the shortened nature of this series means you will see Wood, you will see Potts, you will see, you'll see everyone, maybe not Dan Lawrence in the batting lineup of things, but you will see everyone in that bowling unit get given a chance to play. And then if and when he does play, what are his speeds like? Can he still offer that elite pace? Because if Mark Wood can still offer that elite pace, then he's going to be jumped into that category, because we don't have Jofra Archer, because Ollie Stone is still missing with injury. So yeah, I think I'll go Mark Wood. The batting side, I think Ollie Pope, vice captain. We might well have to captain if Ben Stokes' knee plays up. So it'd be interesting how he goes at number 3 again.
Well, I'm glad you've all chosen different people because that allows me to say I was going to go Ollie Robinson. Anyway, let's turn to the Aussies on the flip side, and Alex has already scared us by talking about Scott Boland, but looking at the rest of the Aussie squad, Harrison, who there do you think is going to score a lot of runs in this Test series?
Well, on that front, obviously Steve Smith and Marnus Labuschagne are the obvious selections. But as I tweeted, that's awful. But as I tweeted during Travis Head's knock in that first day of the final, he is the X factor for Australia. He, as I spoke earlier, he's the one who can take a game away in an hour, 2 hours, and suddenly you're way on the back foot. His attacking ability is kind of the perfect counter to Bazball. He will take the fight to England. He will take the attack to them, and England will have to find a way to deal with that. There is a weakness in this game. They found if you bowl short at his right shoulder, there was a little area there where doesn't like it so much he can fend, and I believe he got out that way in that test. And I mean, he is the one, but I think it's inevitable that Steve Smith is going to score absolutely bucket loads of runs as well. That man just loves batting in England. His average is ridiculously high for his last 9 innings or so in this country. And I mean, if he doesn't score, I'd say at least 400, 500 runs in this series, then something's gone horrifically wrong, and England have definitely won the Ashes.
I'd like that to happen now. I mean, you mentioned there about Smith and Labuschagne. It's a very strong batting order, I think it's fair to say. How do you get them out? What's the key? And how's Bazball going to stand up against what is arguably the strongest team it's come up against so far, Alex?
I think part of that we actually saw in Pakistan a little bit. Everybody went the underrated element of Bazball. Everyone goes, "Oh, Bazball is the batting." Well, actually, the fundamental aspect of Bazball is we've taken 20 wickets. I think every game of cricket that Brendan McCullum and Ben Stokes have led, or every bar one, it's a ridiculous stat. Pakistan, notoriously dead pitches, impossible. Australia went there the year before us, and it was like 700 for 3 declared plays, 600 for 5 declared, and that was it. They were horrible games. They found a way to take 20 wickets, so don't be surprised to see Ben Stokes conjure up some wacky fields. We may have some wacky bowling changes at times. Wouldn't surprise me if Joe Root comes on occasionally to try his little golden right arm round the wicket, off spin darts. I think they may go leg slip to Steve Smith at times. We've seen that work in the past. They will find a way. They will have plans ABC all the way through. But at the same time, that Australian middle order is absolutely world class, particularly those 3 of Smith, Labuschagne, and Head. So I think it'll be a good contest.
David Warner, another one who we haven't spoken about yet. I mean, he's a bit like in the middle. There's a lot of talk about his future after the series. I think he's retiring soon, isn't he? Have I made that up? No, I've not made that up. Yeah. But for him, he'll want a swan song farewell, but I just can't see it with Stuart Broad bowling in Rockets and having him in his back pocket. Anyway, in terms of the bowling, we mentioned earlier how strong it is as well, and how scary it is for England as a prospect. Who do you reckon might be underrated? Is Nathan Lyon as a spinner, given we don't have Jack Leach, just going to give Australia the edge, Rob?
I think it's definitely something, well, it definitely gives them the advantage on paper. You've got a spinner there who's been consistently playing Test cricket for God knows how long, takes wickets for fun. He's not overly expensive, which will be interesting to see how England go about him, because I feel like there's going to be a little bit of something in that England background that's going to be like, if we can get after Nathan Lyon here, we can send a statement to the Aussies that they can't plug him in at one end and rotate the seams at the other end. They have to keep changing up. And if they can't, if Lyon can't settle down, and then that allows England to play how they want. So I think that's going to be a big battle to whoever he's playing. He did well against the left-handers last time, so maybe if Duckett survives the early overs, maybe Lyon gets an early bowl at him if if Pat Cummins wants to see that way. I honestly think they're change bowlers in terms of selection. I think Josh Hazelwood's going to have a big role to play, even if he doesn't suit up on Friday, because he's just going to be a set of fresh legs. You know, there's a lot to talk about if Pat Cummins is going to be able to go 5 tests while bowling and being captain. I mean, Josh Hazelwood's not exactly a bad replacement to come in for him if Cummins can't play the 5 test matches. If he needs a break by the 3rd game, then Josh Hazelwood's right there ready to go. Mitchell Starc, I think, is maybe being a little bit underrated. I love watching Mitchell Starc bowl. I think he's really good. I think, Alex, you've said it in a couple of group chats, kind of that change of angle that he offers, the left arm bowling aspect is going to be a key battle against. I fear for Zach Crawley at the top of the order again. I mean, if Stark gets on a roll against him, that's not lasting very long for Zach. So yeah, I think their bowling is very strong, but where England could try, I mean, England aren't going to sit back and they're not going to sit back and let the Aussies bowl to them. They're going to put pressure back on them. But I think that first thing they're going to really try and do is put Nathan Lyon out of his rhythm, not let him settle. And England, Pope, Root, Stokes, Bairstow, all very good players of spin, can use the sweep, reverse sweep to manoeuvre the field around. So I think that's going to be a really big battle when Lyon gets in against England's middle order.
Certainly. I think we should be a bit more cynical now for England and talk about their weaknesses. Where does this England team seem vulnerable against an Aussie side? Anywhere or nowhere?
Top of the order again.
Whereabouts, Harrison?
Is there a weakness? No. Definitely, I think.
Watch yourself.
It's just lost everyone the Ashes. We've just lost the Ashes because Harrison says we're invincible.
Well, time will tell on that front. But as Rob said, the top order, I think you do look at it. Duckett has been fantastic since coming back in English shirt and did it against Ireland as well. But you do wonder in England conditions against a high quality Australian attack, how will he fare? I think he'd be perfectly fine, to be honest. He's kind of he looks rejuvenated, a new player, confident in his own game. And there's this ridiculous stat where he's only left, I think, single digits number of balls since he's returned from nearly 700, 800 balls he's faced, which is mental and kind of does typify the way England have been trying to play since he came in. But then his partner, obviously, Zach Crawley at the top, much talked about figure for England. Has his good moments, has his bad moments. He's had a pretty decent build up to the Ashes, actually, some runs against Ireland, albeit a bit streaky, and then a fair few runs in county cricket too. But that's the area Australia will be looking to exploit. Because if they can get England down 2 down early on in most innings, then that middle order suddenly maybe can't play with the same freedom as they have done, and it just kind of reverses the roles a bit and let Australia go all out attack on England, whereas England maybe could get a bit stuck. But I mean, where have they been? Remember that New Zealand test last year at Headingley when Bairstow and Jamie Oaten played those knocks to dig them out of an impossible situation. So we'll see.
We will see, and not long to go now. Before we move on to the women's Ashes, it's all Ashes today. Let's get some predictions in. 3 days out, let's put the curse on and hold you down and ask you, what is your prediction for the end of series scoreline in this Ashes series? And Duffers, you're going to get the joy of going first.
Oh, lovely. I'm going to go. I genuinely think this has the potential to be one of, if not the greatest test series of all time. I'm going to go 3-2 to England.
Close, very close indeed. Rob, are you going to make it a bigger margin for England to win, or do you share it's going to be very close?
It's going to be close. I'm going to say 2-1 because I don't think you could discount English weather at any point during this series. I think maybe that plays into Bazball's hands even more because he got even less time to play with, so it's even more gung-ho. But look, I think Australia are maybe underestimating a little bit how impactful the England will be on them. And I also think England are also underestimating how good Australia can be. So I'm really intrigued for this Edgbaston test because you're going to see like this is the best thing about 5 Test match series. You're going to see, weaknesses are going to get exposed. How do you counteract them? So I think 2-1 England. I think this squad is probably as good as we've had for a while that can win the Ashes. Even our reserves are really, really strong. It's just going to be, can you not have any major batting collapses? Can you put together partnerships and spend time in the middle and get runs on the board? And then, I'm not that worried about the bowling because, as Alex has said, we've found a way to take 20 wickets on even the most deadest wickets that you can find in cricket. So I don't think the bowling is a major concern unless Jimmy Anderson's short broad go down. In that case, we're in big trouble. But yeah, I think 2-1 England.
Okay, Harrison, where are you going to go?
I'm deliberating between 4-1 and 3-2, but I will lean on the 3-2 side purely because, as Rob put it there, this Australia side are actually very good at cricket. There is a very good reason why they've won as many matches as they have and won that World Test Championship final. So it will be 3-2, but obviously England will win it.
And I'm going 3-0 mainly because I put a bet on in January and I want it to come through because that could be an extra 35 quid for me. Thank you. Right, let's park that then. We're all very excited for that, but we're also excited for the women's Ashes, which is also getting away. 2 Ashes series were being absolutely spoiled this summer. And today, England have announced the squad for the one-off test match, which is taking place at Trent Bridge later this month. And Harrison, I'll come to you first. What did you make of this squad? And do you think it has the potential to get England off to a winning start against a very, very strong Australian side?
It's a very much the squad kind of expected. There's a couple of nice new names in there, Lon Filer and Danny Gibson, both from the Western Storm. Gibson's kind of been in and around England set for a while. I believe she was a reserve for the T20 World Cup earlier this year. Hard hitting all rounder, bowls pace. Lauren Fire bowls even quicker, but can be a bit all over the place for a line at time. Bit consistency there, but it's nice to see England kind of bringing those new players through because there will be a time when they're going to be needed on a regular basis. But the more alarming thing from the squad is there's no frontline second spin option, which in a women's test is kind of very shocking. It's a very key part of the game, and you don't want to be relying too much on Eccleston because if she bowls too many overs, she could injure herself or hinder her part in those games where she really does come into her own. But I do believe the coach, John Lewis, has said that there is a chance either Sarah Glenn or Charlie Dean could come into the squad if they see the wicket and think it will turn, which is very interesting. But it's a squad you'd expect. It's one that definitely can beat the Aussies. But we've been talking about the Australian men's team and how good they are. So the women's team are another level, albeit they're going to be without their usual captain Meg Lanning, but they have been untouchable in the women's game for so long now, and it's going to be a mountain to climb for England, but they can certainly do it in this home summer.
God, they're annoyingly good, these Australian teams, aren't they? It's quite frustrating. I wish they were just rubbish. So another big headline from that squad is that Kate Cross is coming back after illness. I don't know if you've read about that or heard about that, but she had a nasty stomach bug that has been hindering her. Alex, how good is it for them to have Kate Cross back in this side in times for a one-off test match?
I think it's a massive, massive boost. You've just lost the experience of Catherine Sciver-Brunt from this side. That seam bowling attack is looking, whilst exciting, a little light on experience. Andrew Trobsol has recently retired. Obviously, now you've lost Catherine Sciver-Brunt. So I think to have Kate Cross as your lead seam bowler is massive. I think she will be quite destructive with a red ball. I believe she took a fair few wickets in the last test that they played. So I think it's huge that she's back. And it will be a big boost because, quite frankly, I think they're going to need her because this Australian side, as you've said, is very, very good.
Very, very good indeed. And Harrison touched on it in his first point about the fact that they only have one spinner, which is Lancashire Thunder's Sophie Eccleston. Just want to put that in there after a sad week for the Thunder. But Rob, that spinner issue sort of comes back to this thing we've got going on in the men's side as well, is that Or do we play a spinner in an Ashes test? Do we need more frontline spinners? How do you assess that? What do you think? Have they made the right decision there?
I think I think you go in with a spinner. I think it's one of those ones where if you go in without a recognised frontline spinner, and then the pitch immediately starts to show signs of turn and deterioration on day one, you're immediately looking at it going, "Shit, we've made the wrong call here." Um, I think, I mean, the women's side is not exactly. You've got players coming back from injury and players missing out through injury, so it's kind of a little bit of the worst of every single combination that's going here. I think you're going to have to watch Sophie Eccleston's workload. I think you can't ask her to do ridiculous amounts of bowling because I think she's struggled with injuries in the past, so you don't want her getting injured because if she gets injured, then we really are looking very low indeed on recognised ones. I think it's something that potentially we need to look at. Does more need to be poured into the women's spinning side of things? Do there need to be more like concerted effort put into that? Yeah, I think it's right to be a little bit concerned. But Sophie Eccleston's very, very good. So hopefully she does the business and she can help spin us to a series win, not just a test win. But yeah, definitely right to be a little bit concerned and definitely one to look out. Definitely a subject to talk about in the future. And with the way that the ECB supposedly want to grow the women's game, is something that should probably be high up on the list of priorities. But as we talked about last episode, there's still an awful lot of things that need to sort out first before we can get into coaching side of things. So there's a lot of basic things that needs to be put into place.
Definitely. Someone else who we need to watch and keep an eye on though is Izzy Wong. Now she was box office, I think it's fair to say, and has had a meteoric rise over the past few years. Harrison, how do you assess her chances in this Ashes series? Do you reckon it could be a very much a breakthrough series for her? What do you think about her prospects?
I would argue she's already very much broken through a regular kind of innings in the side now. It's a name you expect to see in squads and on team sheets for most games. There is kind of a theory going around. She's been worked out a bit at times by some teams, and you do see her going for a lot of runs, especially in terms of T20s. But that campaign she had in the Women's Premier League was superb. I mean, that hat-trick's been a moment a lot of people have watched and will stay with a lot of people for a long time. It's just a very special moment for anyone to have, especially in the first edition of a new women's franchise tournament, to make your mark like that. And she can certainly make a similar mark in the Ashes. That the pace she brings is kind of unseen by a lot of like the seam pace bowlers you see in the women's game. It's a bit unknown in some aspects, but with it brings the ability for the Australians to score quick runs as well, but ability for England to take quick wickets and has some really threatening spells there. So you'd expect it to play a big role in that, probably starting off with the test and then play most of the white ball stuff and leave her more well and truly on the Ashes.
So a lot of new talent, but there's also the old favourites, I think it's fair to say. Heather Knight and Nat Brunt being core to that. Alex, these experienced players who have played so much cricket for England women, having someone like that at the anchor point of this side in an Ashes series is going to help so much, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, the fear is you get in a complete new group of young, exciting talent. Well, the problem is with young, exciting talent, nobody's beaten Australia for however many years it seems now. So actually, it's quite nice to have a few more experienced players who at least know the feeling of what it's like to beat Australia. They know what it takes to win in an Ashes series, to win big finals, big games for England. So yeah, I mean, their leadership skills on the field, off the field, with bat in hand, with ball in hand, I think it's going to be massive. And I think they'll set the tone for England this series.
And finally, one other person who I highlighted and wanted to talk about is Alice Capsey. Now, she had a great year last year, and I think she'll probably have a great year this year. In terms of her, a young talent, first Ashes. Rob, how does she make sure that she can balance going into this big series at such a young age?
I'm not entirely sure there is I'm not sure there's a particularly right way to do so. I think it's one of those ones where we talk about it a lot. Well, I certainly mention it a lot. Is that people talk about experience? You can't buy experience. You can't go to the shop and ask for like 5 years worth of experience. You just have to go through it. And I think that's just probably the best way of teaching it. She's got, as we mentioned there, Heather Knight and Nat Silverbrunt, Kate Cross. She's got established figures in that team that she can go to and look for advice and everything. So yeah, I'm honestly not sure what the best way is to deal with it, but I think it's try and maybe enjoy the most of it. I guess that's what I like I said, I don't really know, but I think she just has to go through it. I think she'll be empowered by her teammates and by the coaching staff to let her play, do the talking. She's a phenomenal player. So, I don't think the occasion's going to get too big for her. I think she's just got to kind of just go through it, and her teammates will be there to pick her up when she needs it.
Absolutely seamless, Harrison. No one noticed a thing.
Perfect.
He just dropped out and came back in. And acted like no one would notice. Anyway, let's, before we end this, get a predictions in again, this time about the women's Ashes. Now we know it is a multi-format series, but I think we're all going to be a bit more sceptical, aren't we? Harrison, can England win the women's Ashes? Yes or no?
I really want to say yes. I really want to, but I just can't see it happening. I mean, this Australian side, they've come here a couple of times now and won the Ashes, and they know what it takes. And it's basically the same group, and they've just added even more star quality to it. Alana King's a perfect example of that. So unfortunately, in this case, I'm going to have to take my England hat off and say Australia will win.
Oh dear. I think it's going to be the same all around the call, really. Alex, do you agree, dare I ask?
Yes, I hate to say it, but let's face it, this Australian side is quite possibly the greatest ever, I would even say most dominant sporting team across any sport ever at the minute. They just don't seem like losing. They wouldn't, I think England are running close. This is a good, young, exciting England side, also with a nice mix of experience there as well. So it wouldn't surprise me if we win a few games, but yeah, this Australian side is top draw, and I think we will do well to come close to them.
Please, Rob, give me some optimism. Come on.
The optimism I can give you is I'll echo Alex's opinion of I think England will run Australia close, and I think closer than some people maybe predict. But you can't ignore how good this Australian side is. They are ridiculously good. As Alex has kind of alluded to there, this is arguably one of the most dominant sides we've potentially ever seen in sports. So, look, I think England will definitely steal some games here and there, and I think maybe in the final points tally will be quite close. But I think Australia's experience and ultimately their quality is just going to shine through at those key moments where games in the balance need someone to step up. I think Australia are going to have the better of those moments, and ultimately that is what is going to decide it. But I'll give the optimism that England will definitely run it close. I don't think this is going to be like a one-sided affair that many will predict it to be.
Well, sod you all. I'm saying England are winning because it's the Ashes summer and I want 2 Ashes wins. So I'm going to be optimistic, or I've just given them the kiss of death. I'll let you decide. Now, we've no Ask TCM this week because I didn't put a tweet out. So that if that doesn't sum up how my hungover day is going, I don't know what does. So we're going to leave it there. But my thanks once again to Rob, Alex and Harrison for joining us, and my thanks to you at home for watching. If you enjoyed, please do like and subscribe, and you can check out all the other TCM Howzats on the channel, as well as loads of other stuff. Well, not loads, but some other stuff. Anyway, that is it for us now, and we will see you in the next one.